I was standing at the baptismal font, holding 6-month-old Emma in the white christening gown I'd sewn by hand. The priest had just named me as Emma's godmother, an honor I treasured more than anything. My son Garrett stood beside me, beaming with pride. The congregation watched this beautiful family moment, sunlight streaming through the stained glass windows. Then Stephanie leaned close, her breath warm against my ear, her smile never faltering for the watching crowd, and whispered those words that would change everything. "Maybe it's time you step aside, Francis. We don't need you anymore." My hands trembled, nearly dropping the baby. Everything I'd built, the house they lived in, the life they had, suddenly felt like it was crumbling beneath my feet. I stood frozen at that baptismal font, still holding Emma, trying to process what Stephanie had just said. The words echoed in my mind. "Step aside. Don't need you anymore." I looked at Garrett, hoping he'd heard, but no. He was smiling at the congregation, completely oblivious to the knife his wife had just slipped between my ribs. The ceremony continued around me, but I was numb, going through the motions. My voice sounded strange in my own ears as I spoke the godmother's vows. When it came time to hand Emma back during the blessing, my hands were still shaking. I kept replaying Stephanie's whisper. What did it mean? Was I being too involved with my grandchildren? Too helpful? I'd thought I was being supportive, not overbearing. But maybe I'd crossed a line I hadn't seen. During the recessional hymn, Stephanie linked arms with Garrett and gave me a cold smile that made my stomach turn. There was something calculating in her eyes, something I'd never noticed before. The reception was at my home, a beautiful 4-bedroom craftsman in one of the most desirable neighborhoods in town. I'd lived here for 42 years, raised Garrett within these walls. The house held so many memories. Photos of 3 generations lined the hallway. The furniture Harold and I had picked out together still filled every room. I could almost see him sitting in his favorite chair by the fireplace, reading the newspaper on Sunday mornings. Harold had been gone for 5 years now. Heart attack, sudden and devastating. He'd left me comfortable, though not wealthy by some standards. But I had the house paid off, his retirement accounts, enough to live on. And I'd been using that comfort to help Garrett and Stephanie for the past 3 years. They'd moved into my guest house, a converted garage apartment, supposedly temporarily. But temporary had become permanent. It was spacious enough, with 2 bedrooms, a kitchenette, a bathroom, perfect for a young family just starting out. But 3 years had passed, and they showed no signs of leaving. Not that I minded. Having them close meant I got to see Noah and Emma every day. What I hadn't told anyone was how much I'd been supporting them financially. Car payments on Stephanie's SUV, daycare for 4-year-old Noah, groceries, utilities. All of it came from my accounts. Garrett worked in marketing, but the salary wasn't great. Stephanie had quit her teaching job when she got pregnant with Emma, deciding to stay home with the babies. I'd justified the help, telling myself it was what Harold would have wanted. Supporting our only child, making sure our grandchildren had what they needed. I moved through the reception on autopilot, playing the gracious hostess. I'd paid for the catered food, arranged all the decorations, baked the cake myself. Guests complimented the beautiful setup, the delicious spread. I smiled and thanked them, but my mind was elsewhere. Around 2 p.m, I noticed Stephanie and her mother Linda huddled in the corner of my dining room. They were speaking intensely, heads close together. Something about their body language seemed off, secretive. Linda was 58, a thin woman with sharp features and sharper eyes. She'd moved to town 6 months ago to be closer to Stephanie and the grandchildren, she'd said. But I'd never warmed to her. There was something about Linda that set my teeth on edge. I needed to check on dessert in the kitchen. The kitchen had an old-fashioned swinging door, a feature from when the house was built in 1975. I was about to push through when I heard my name spoken in Stephanie's voice. I froze, my hand on the door. They were in the butler's pantry, just beyond the kitchen. Their voices were low, but the old house's acoustics carried sound in strange ways. I could hear every word. Linda's voice came first. "Did you tell her yet?" I hinted at the church, Stephanie replied. We need to move faster. She's too sharp. The house alone is worth 700,000, Linda said. And you said there's savings? At least 300,000 in accounts I've seen. Maybe more hidden. Stephanie's voice was casual, like she was discussing the weather, not my life savings. My blood ran cold. I pressed myself against the wall, barely breathing. Once she's out of the way, you file for conservatorship, Linda continued. She's old enough. We can make it work. Conservatorship. The word hit me like a physical blow. They wanted to declare me incompetent, take control of my life. Garrett doesn't suspect anything, Stephanie said. He thinks his mother is just being generous. The contempt in her voice when she said generous made me feel sick. What about when you cut her off from the kids? Linda asked. She'll fight it, but we'll make her look unstable. Document everything. Build a case. Stephanie sounded so calm, so methodical, just like we planned in Colorado. Colorado. What did that mean? By Christmas, this house is ours, Stephanie said with a laugh. She'll be in some facility, and we'll finally have what we deserve. I backed away from the door silently, my heart hammering so hard I thought it might burst from my chest. The betrayal was complete. This wasn't about stepping back from being too involved. This was a calculated plan to steal everything. My home, my money, my freedom, and my own son had no idea. I returned to the reception, forcing myself to smile, to chat with guests, to pretend everything was fine. But inside, I was screaming. I watched Garrett playing with Noah in the backyard, bouncing baby Emma on his knee. My sweet son, who'd always been trusting, maybe too trusting. He had no idea what his wife was planning. Should I tell him? Would he even believe me? Garrett had always been devoted to Stephanie. In the 7 years they'd been married, he'd rarely taken my side in any disagreement. He adored his wife, thought she could do no wrong. After the guests left, after the caterers had cleaned up and departed, I asked Garrett and Stephanie to sit down with me. We gathered in my living room, the same room where I'd nursed Garrett as a baby, where Harold and I had celebrated our anniversary every year, where we'd opened Christmas presents for 4 decades. I've been thinking, I said carefully. You're building your own family now. Maybe it's time I step back from helping so much. I was testing them, watching for their reaction. Would they reveal their plan? Stephanie's eyes flashed with something dark, just for a second, before her expression smoothed into concern. Francis, that's so thoughtful. Actually, we were hoping to talk about the future. Garrett looked confused. What do you mean, Mom? I mean the financial support, I said. The guest house. Maybe you're ready to be fully independent. Stephanie jumped in quickly. Of course we're grateful. But Francis, we wouldn't want to burden you. Maybe we should discuss arrangements. The word arrangement sent ice through my veins. The same word Linda had used. Garrett said slowly. Mom, you're not a burden. But Steph and I have talked about getting our own place eventually, Stephanie added with a sweet smile. Though we worry about you here alone, this big house. It's a lot for someone your age. There it was, the opening move. I'm 67, not 90, I said firmly. I'm perfectly capable. Stephanie's smile tightened just a fraction. Of course. We just care about you. I made my decision in that moment. I think it's time you move out of the guest house. Find your own place. I'll give you 60 days. Garrett's jaw dropped. Mom, what? Why? I couldn't tell him the truth yet. He wouldn't believe me. He'd think I was being paranoid or cruel. You need your independence. It's time. Stephanie's face showed pure rage for one split second before the mask slammed back into place. If that's what you want, Francis, we'll go. Her voice was ice. The battle lines had been drawn. I'd fired the first shot. I just didn't realize yet how ruthlessly Stephanie would fire back. That night, alone in my house, after they'd retreated to the guest house, I sat in Harold's reading chair and tried to make sense of what I'd learned. The plan to take my house. The conservatorship plot. The mention of Colorado. What had happened in Colorado? And how could I protect myself from people who were willing to lie, to manipulate my own son against me? I thought about that quiet call to the bank Stephanie had mentioned so casually. She'd already been looking at my accounts. How much did she know? How much had she already planned? I realized with growing dread that I'd just made a dangerous enemy, and the war had only begun. 3 days after the baptism, I drove to my bank. It was a Tuesday morning, cool and clear. I'd been banking at the same branch for 20 years, knew most of the staff by name. Dorothy, the branch manager, greeted me warmly when I walked in. "We need to talk about my accounts," I told her. In her office, I explained that I was making some changes. I wanted to stop all automatic payments I'd set up for Garrett and Stephanie. The car payment, the insurance, the credit cards I'd been covering. All of it. Dorothy looked concerned. "Is everything okay with Garrett?" I couldn't explain the whole truth. "They need to stand on their own," I said simply. "It's time." She helped me cancel the automatic transfers. It felt both empowering and terrifying. I was cutting them off financially, forcing their hand. But I was also protecting myself. If they wanted my money, they'd have to take me to court for it. And I'd fight. I went home feeling both guilty and determined. Was I being too harsh? But then I remembered Stephanie's cold voice. "She'll be in some facility." No. I was protecting myself. That afternoon, Garrett showed up at my door. He was angry, angrier than I'd seen him in years. He stormed into my living room without being invited. "Mom, what the hell? You canceled everything?" I tried to stay calm. "Garrett, you're 38 years old. You need to manage your own finances. Do you know what Stephanie's been through? What she told me you said?" My stomach dropped. "What did she tell you?" "That you've been threatening her for weeks. That you told her if she doesn't obey your rules, you'll cut us off and take the kids away from her." "I never said that." "Garrett, that's not true. I never threatened anyone. She showed me her diary, Mom. Months of entries about your controlling behavior." This was the twist I hadn't seen coming. A diary. Documentation. Stephanie had been building a paper trail, creating false evidence. Garrett pulled out his phone, showed me photos of handwritten pages. I read them with growing horror. "Francis came over unannounced again today, criticized how I dress Emma." The entry was dated 2 months ago. I'd never criticized how Stephanie dressed the baby. "Francis told me I'm not good enough for Garrett. Never will be." Another lie. "Francis said if I don't do things her way, she'll make sure we have nothing." Words I'd never spoken. "Garrett, these are lies," I said desperately. "All of it. I've never said any of these things." But even as I said it, I could hear how it sounded. Defensive. Exactly what Stephanie would have predicted I'd say. Garrett looked at me with something worse than anger. Pity. "Mom, listen to yourself. That's crazy." The word crazy hit me like a slap. "It's not crazy. I overheard her and Linda planning to take my house, to have me declared incompetent." Garrett shook his head slowly. "You heard wrong. You misunderstood. Stephanie would never do that." I tried to explain, but everything I said made it worse. Every true thing I said sounded paranoid. "Stephanie was right," Garrett said quietly. "She said you'd deny it. She said you'd try to make her look like the bad guy." I was losing him. I could feel it happening. My son slipping away from me, poisoned against me by lies so carefully constructed. "Then why are you trying to control our lives?" Garrett demanded. "Why are you punishing Stephanie?" "I'm not. I'm protecting myself from people who want to steal everything I have." Even as I said it, I knew how it sounded. Unhinged. "We're moving out today," Garrett said. "And Mom, Stephanie thinks we need space from you." I didn't want to believe it, but after this? Space? What does that mean? "It means we need time. Don't call. Don't come by. Let us figure out our life without your interference." "You're cutting me off from my grandchildren?" My voice broke. "You did this, Mom. You chose money over family." He left. I watched from the window as he and Stephanie loaded their belongings from the guest house into a moving truck. It took them 3 hours. Stephanie caught me watching at one point and smiled through the window. That smile was triumphant, cold. It said, "I'm winning." And she was. I spent the next 2 weeks in agony. I tried to respect the space Garrett had demanded, but it was killing me. I hadn't seen Noah or Emma in 14 days, the longest stretch since they were born. I sent text messages to Garrett. "I miss you. Can we talk?" No responses. I tried calling. His phone went straight to voicemail every time. I was blocked. I sent gifts for the children through a delivery service. They were returned, unopened. Every attempt at contact was rejected. One afternoon, I couldn't stand it anymore. I drove to their new apartment, a complex about 45 minutes away. It wasn't much, a small 2-bedroom in an aging building. I saw Noah playing in the courtyard with Stephanie. I sat in my car watching through tears. My grandson, running around laughing. He looked happy. I wanted so badly to call out to him, to run to him, to hold him. But I didn't. I knew it would make everything worse. So I just watched for 5 minutes, memorizing the way he moved, the sound of his laughter carrying across the parking lot. Then I drove away. 3 days later, a sheriff's deputy knocked on my door. I was being served with a restraining order. "For what?" I asked, my voice shaking. "I haven't done anything." The deputy handed me the papers and explained I had a hearing in 10 days. After he left, I sat at my kitchen table and read the petition with hands that wouldn't stop trembling. Stephanie had filed for a restraining order on behalf of herself and the children. The allegations made me feel physically ill. According to the document, I'd shown up at their apartment drunk, banging on the door, screaming threats. I'd told Stephanie I'd take those kids from her. My behavior had frightened Noah so badly, he now had nightmares about scary grandma. None of it was true, not a single word. But there were sworn statements attached. Linda had signed an affidavit claiming I had alcohol problems and anger issues. A man I'd never seen before, supposedly a neighbor at the apartment complex, had witnessed my drunk visit. He described me in detail, said he'd been concerned enough to document the incident. It was all fabricated, all lies. But it looked official, documented, real. The restraining order was temporary, but would become permanent if the judge granted it at the hearing. It prohibited me from coming within 500 feet of Stephanie or the children. No contact, direct or indirect. No communication through third parties. Violation meant arrest. I was being cut off from my grandchildren by court order. I called Patricia, a friend from my book club who'd retired from practicing family law. She came over that evening and read through the petition, while I made tea with shaking hands. "Francis, these are serious allegations," Patricia said, her face grave. "Drunk and disorderly, threats. None of it happened. I drove by once, didn't even get out of the car. Can you prove that?" I couldn't. No witnesses, no alibi for the date they claimed I'd shown up drunk. "They have sworn statements," Patricia continued. "A child supposedly afraid. This won't be easy to fight. What do I do?" "We fight it at the hearing." "But Francis, if they're this organized, this willing to lie under oath, what else are they planning?" I didn't want to think about it. 10 days later, I stood in the courthouse wearing my best navy suit and the pearls Harold had given me for our 30th anniversary. I wanted to look stable, respectable, competent, not like someone who gets drunk and pounds on doors. Garrett was there with Stephanie and Linda. My son wouldn't meet my eyes. That hurt worse than anything. The hearing was quick and brutal. Stephanie testified with tears streaming down her face. She described how I'd shown up at 9 o'clock at night, drunk, screaming. How I'd threatened to take her babies away. How terrified she'd been. Linda testified that I'd been deteriorating since Harold died, drinking more, becoming unstable. That she'd tried to help me, but I'd rejected her concern. The neighbor testified that he'd seen an older woman matching my description behaving erratically at the apartment complex on the night in question. He'd been concerned enough to write down the details. Then they brought in Noah, 4 years old, small and scared in the judge's chambers. The judge spoke to him gently, while Stephanie's lawyer and Patricia were present. Noah said he was scared of Grandma Frances because she yells and breaks things. All lies, all coached, but he was a child. Judges believe children. When it was my turn to testify, I tried to explain. I denied everything. I told the judge about the overheard conversation at the baptism, about Stephanie's plan to take my house. But I sounded defensive, emotional, which fit perfectly into their narrative of an unstable woman losing her grip on reality. The judge granted a 6-month restraining order. 6 months without seeing Emma or Noah. 6 months of being legally barred from my own grandchildren. As I left the courthouse, Stephanie brushed past me and whispered, "Should have stepped aside when I asked nicely." I sat in my car in the parking lot and cried so hard I couldn't breathe. I'd done everything right. I'd respected their space. I'd followed the rules. And I'd still lost. The system had failed me because Stephanie's lies were more organized than my truth. 6 weeks passed. Each day felt like a year. I marked them off on my calendar with a red pen. 135 days remaining until the restraining order expired. But even then, would Garrett let me back into their lives? I'd withdrawn from everything. Friends from book club called, but I couldn't bring myself to answer. My days became a routine of waking up, sitting in Emma's nursery, the room I decorated with hand-painted clouds and stars, and crying. I'd lost weight. Food had no taste. Nothing mattered. Patricia checked in regularly. She'd hired a private investigator named Jack, a former police detective, to look into Linda and Stephanie's past. But it was slow work and expensive. My savings were draining away, paying for lawyers and investigators, while Stephanie sat in her apartment, probably laughing. The only thing that kept me going was looking at photos of Noah and Emma. I had hundreds on my phone. Noah's first day of preschool, Emma learning to roll over, birthday parties, Christmas mornings. I scrolled through them every night before bed, memorizing their faces. One Tuesday morning in late October, my doorbell rang. 2 women stood on my porch, badges identifying them as Adult Protective Services. "Can we help you?" I asked, confused. They explained that someone had filed a report expressing concern for my welfare. They were required to do a wellness check. I let them in, bewildered. They asked questions. Did I live alone? Yes. Did I remember to eat? I hesitated. I hadn't been eating well. Any trouble managing finances? I was spending heavily on legal fees. Any family support? My son wouldn't speak to me. Any medical conditions? Just high blood pressure, controlled with medication. They walked through my house. It was immaculate. I'd been cleaning obsessively to fill the empty hours. They checked my refrigerator. It was mostly empty. I hadn't been shopping. They looked at my medications, all properly labeled and current. They asked about the restraining order. How did they know about that? After an hour, they left, saying the investigation would be reviewed. I called Patricia immediately. "Who would file an APS report on you?" Patricia asked. "Stephanie," I said. "Who else?" Patricia confirmed it later that day. The report had been filed anonymously, but it claimed I showed signs of dementia, that I left the stove on, forgot to take medication, was losing weight rapidly, all designed to build a case that I was declining mentally. "Frances, this is strategic," Patricia said. "They're creating an official record." "For what?" Her voice was grim. "Guardianship?" 2 weeks later, I was served again. This time, a petition for guardianship and conservatorship. Petitioners, Garrett and Stephanie. I read it sitting at my kitchen table, the same table where I'd taught Garrett to do his homework, where Harold and I had paid bills and made plans. The document claimed I was 67 and showing signs of cognitive decline, that I was unable to manage my finances properly, that I was isolated and depressed, a danger to myself, that I was losing weight, not caring for myself. The APS investigation was cited as evidence. even though they'd found nothing seriously wrong. The restraining order incident was mentioned as proof of impaired judgment. My recent erratic spending was noted. They didn't mention the spending was on lawyers to fight their false accusations. Attached was a letter from Dr. Gregory Walsh, a geriatric psychiatrist. He stated that I showed probable early-stage dementia and recommended guardianship for my own protection. I'd never met Dr. Gregory Walsh. Patricia came over that evening. She was furious when she read the petition. "This is elder abuse," she said. "Financial exploitation. Can they do this? They can petition. We'll fight it. But Francis, you need to understand how serious this is." She explained what guardianship meant. If the court granted it, Garrett and Stephanie would control everything. My finances, my healthcare decisions, where I lived, whether I could drive. Everything. I'd have no rights. I'd be declared legally incompetent. "I'm not incompetent," I said desperately. "I'm grieving my grandchildren." "I know. But they've built a narrative. We need to tear it down." That night, I couldn't sleep. I walked through my house, every room holding memories. The living room where Garrett took his first steps. The kitchen where Harold and I danced on our 40th anniversary. Emma's nursery with the murals I'd painted myself. The master bedroom where Harold had died in my arms 5 years ago. This house was my life, my history. The thought of being forced into some facility while Stephanie moved in, raised my grandchildren in my home, slept in my bedroom, it was unbearable. I thought about Harold. What would he do? Harold had always been practical, strategic. I'd been reacting, defending. I needed to go on offense. But how? I was one 67-year-old woman against Stephanie's elaborate schemes, against my own son who'd been turned against me. I felt old, tired, defeated. For the first time, I wondered if I should just give up. Let them have it all. At least the fighting would stop. But then I thought of Emma's smile, Noah's laugh, my grandchildren growing up thinking their grandmother had abandoned them, or worse, that I was some scary monster who'd threatened their mother. I couldn't give up. 10 days before the full guardianship hearing, Patricia and Jack met me at Patricia's office. Jack had found things, important things. "Dr. Gregory Walsh did write that dementia opinion," Jack said. "But he never examined you. The opinion is based solely on a phone consultation with Stephanie, 15 minutes. He has no record of you as a patient." "That's fraud," Patricia said. "There's more," Jack continued. "Linda has a record. 15 years ago in Colorado, she was convicted of financial exploitation of an elderly person. She worked as a caregiver, stole $80,000 from a 90-year-old woman, served 2 years probation." "Colorado," I breathed. "That's what Stephanie mentioned at the baptism." "Stephanie knew about her mother's conviction and hid it from Garrett," Jack said. "We also got a court order to examine that diary. Forensic document examiner analyzed it. All entries written with the same pen, same ink. Written in one sitting, not over 3 months. It's a forgery." Patricia smiled grimly. "We can destroy their case, but there's a timing problem. Before the full hearing, there was a preliminary hearing to determine if a temporary guardian was needed. Patricia said temporary guardianship was rarely granted. We were wrong." The hearing was held in a small courtroom. Judge Anderson, a man in his 50s, who seemed impatient, presided. Stephanie's lawyer, a slick attorney named Preston, presented their case. Francis is alone, isolated. The APS investigation, the restraining order, the dementia diagnosis, financial records showing I'd spent $40,000 in 2 months. He made it sound like erratic spending, not legal defense. Then Garrett testified. "This broke my heart completely. My mother has changed since Dad died," he said. "She's become suspicious, paranoid. She makes wild accusations about Stephanie. I'm worried she's going to hurt herself. I love her. I just want her safe." He believed it. He truly thought he was saving me. Stephanie testified through tears. She'd tried to help me. She was so worried about me being alone in that big house. What if I fell? Had a stroke? No one would know for days. They just wanted to protect me, Patricia argued back. Frances is completely competent. She's being targeted for financial exploitation. She presented Linda's criminal history. The fake medical evaluation. The judge seemed interested, but concerned. The problem was this. I was isolated. I had lost weight. I was spending heavily fighting their case. The APS report, even though it found nothing conclusive, raised concerns. While the full guardianship case would be thoroughly examined, Judge Anderson said he was concerned about my immediate safety. He was going to appoint a temporary emergency guardian, just until the full hearing in 2 weeks, and he appointed Garrett. Effective immediately, my son had legal authority over my finances and my person. Patricia objected strenuously. This is exactly what Stephanie wants. It's prejudicing the full case. The judge said it was limited, temporary, just for safety. Garrett was my son, the natural choice. Overruled. That afternoon, I returned home to find Garrett and Stephanie already in my house. Stephanie was smiling. "Mom, I have temporary authority," Garrett said. "I'm making sure you're safe." They'd brought a caregiver, a stern woman named Mrs. Hughes, to help me. "I don't need help," I said. "Garrett, what are you doing?" "The judge said you need supervision. Mrs. Hughes will stay here." Stephanie walked through my house, touching my things, my furniture, Harold's belongings. "This place is too much for you, Frances." I felt violated in my own home. Over the next few days, Garrett froze my checking account and set up an allowance system. He had access to everything now. Stephanie started helping by sorting through my things, boxing up items, claiming she was organizing. I caught her in Harold's office, going through his desk. "Just helping, Frances. You've let things get so cluttered." She was looking for financial documents, seeing what assets existed. I called Patricia in a panic. "She's in my house, going through everything." "I know. The temporary guardianship gives them access. But Frances, it's only 2 weeks. We'll win the full hearing." "What if we don't?" 1 week into the temporary guardianship, I overheard Stephanie and Garrett talking in my kitchen. "The house will sell for at least $700,000, Stephanie said. "We pay off the mortgage on our apartment, invest the rest." "Steph, we can't sell Mom's house. Baby, she can't live here alone. Once we get full guardianship, we'll find her a nice assisted living place. Sell the house. It's for the best." "I don't know," Garrett said, but his resolve was wavering. "You saw the judge. Even he thinks she needs help. And your mother will be taken care of. We'll visit all the time." "Maybe you're right," Garrett said. I sat in my bedroom that night, the room I'd shared with Harold for 40 years, and knew I had 4 days until the full hearing. If I didn't win, I'd lose everything. My home, my independence, my dignity. Stephanie would have won completely. 3 days before the full guardianship hearing, I was sitting alone in Harold's office. Mrs. Hughes was downstairs watching television. Stephanie and Garrett had left for the evening. I was looking through old files, memory boxes, thinking about giving up. Then I found the trust documents. Harold's will and trust, papers I hadn't looked at in 5 years. I started reading carefully, really reading them for the first time since his death. And I remembered something Harold had done. Something I'd completely forgotten. When Harold died, his assets had been divided carefully. The house came to me outright. His retirement accounts came to me. But the bulk of his life insurance, $3 million, had gone into an irrevocable trust. The terms were specific. I was the trustee, in control of it. Garrett was the sole beneficiary. He'd get half at age 40, which was 2 years from now. The other half at age 45. But there was a clause I'd forgotten about. I read it 3 times to be sure I understood. In the event the beneficiary takes any legal action against the trustee, or files any petition claiming the trustee is incompetent, the trust shall immediately dissolve, and all remaining funds shall be distributed to the American Cancer Society. Harold had put this clause in to protect me from ever being exploited. If Garrett sued me, or tried to control me, he'd lose his entire inheritance. The guardianship petition counted as exactly that. Garrett had no idea this trust existed. Harold and I had planned to tell him when he turned 35, as a surprise for his future. But Harold died before that. I'd meant to tell Garrett afterward, but kept waiting for the right time. It never seemed right. So the trust had been sitting at the bank, growing, untouched, worth over $3.5 million now. Garrett had just forfeited $3.5 million by filing against me, and he didn't even know it existed. More importantly, the trust wasn't part of my estate. It was held by the bank as trustee of record. The guardianship couldn't touch it. Only I could dissolve it or maintain it. This was my leverage. But using it meant Garrett would lose everything. Could I do that to my own son? I called Patricia immediately. I told her about the trust. "Francis, this changes everything," she said. "If we reveal this trust exists, and that the guardianship petition triggered the dissolution clause, we can show clear financial motive for exploitation." "There's more," Patricia continued. "Jack and I have compiled evidence. Dr. Walsh admitted under threat of licensing complaint that he never examined you. He'll testify he was misled. The diary is proven a forgery. We found Linda's victim from Colorado. Agnes is 92 now and willing to testify via video about how Linda stole from her using the exact same method. We have security footage proving you were never at that apartment complex on the night they claimed. The drunk incident never happened. It's perjury. And Noah's preschool teacher documented that he told her he was being coached to say he's afraid of you. We're going to win," Patricia said. "And Stephanie and Linda will face criminal charges. Perjury, fraud, attempted exploitation. What about Garrett? This will destroy him." Garrett made his choice. He believed his wife over his mother. He doesn't know what she is. He's a victim too. Maybe. But you need to protect yourself. I made a decision. We fight. But I want to give Garrett a chance to make this right. I'll tell him about the trust. Before the hearing, give him the chance to withdraw the petition. Francis, he might tell Stephanie. They'll change strategy. He's my son. I have to try. That night, I asked Garrett to come alone. Just us. He arrived wary. Stephanie had wanted to come, but I insisted this was between mother and son. In my living room, I told him everything. About the trust Harold had left. About the dissolution clause. That by filing the guardianship petition, he'd triggered it. He'd lost $3.5 million. And more. Garrett, I know what Stephanie is. I have proof. Your marriage isn't what you think it is. Garrett was stunned. $3 million? $3.5 now. It was supposed to be yours. Your father and I were going to tell you when you turned 35. And the petition, triggered the dissolution. Unless you withdraw it before the hearing. Why didn't you tell me this existed? I was waiting for the right time. But Garrett, listen. There's more you need to know about Stephanie. I told him about Linda's conviction in Colorado. The forged diary. All of it. He didn't want to believe it. No, Stephanie wouldn't. She loves me. She's trying to help you. Is she? Or is she after my house, my money, just like her mother did in Colorado? Garrett stood up. I need to think. The hearing is in 3 days. Withdraw the petition. Save your inheritance. Save yourself. He left without answering. I didn't know if he believed me or if he'd tell Stephanie everything. I'd gambled everything on my son seeing the truth. 2 days passed. I heard nothing from Garrett. The hearing day arrived. I woke up the morning of the full guardianship hearing with a knot of anxiety in my stomach. I hadn't heard from Garrett since our conversation 2 days ago. I didn't know if he'd withdrawn the petition. I didn't know if he'd told Stephanie about the trust. I knew nothing. Patricia picked me up at 9. I'd dressed in a simple gray dress and the pearls, wanting to look dignified and competent, not like someone who needed a guardian. Ready? Patricia asked. No, but let's go. On the courthouse steps, I saw Garrett and Stephanie arriving. Garrett wouldn't look at me. Stephanie looked confident, almost smug. The petition hadn't been withdrawn. Garrett had chosen Stephanie over the truth. He'd chosen her over $3.5 million. My heart broke, but I squared my shoulders. Time to fight. The courtroom was the same one as before. Judge Anderson presided. This was a full evidentiary hearing, scheduled to take most of the day. Stephanie's lawyer Preston went first, presenting essentially the same case as before. Frances is declining, isolated, can't manage her affairs, needs protection. But now Patricia got to present a full rebuttal. She called Dr. Walsh as her first witness. Under oath, he admitted reluctantly that he'd never examined me. He'd done a 15-minute phone consultation with Stephanie, thought it was for preliminary screening only, not a legal opinion. He'd been misled. His credibility was destroyed. Patricia called a different geriatric psychiatrist who had examined me 3 days earlier. He testified I was completely competent, no signs of dementia, cognitively sharp. I was depressed from being separated from my grandchildren, but that was situational, not pathological. I'd be depressed too if someone was trying to steal my life. Patricia introduced the forensic document analysis of the diary. The expert testified it was a forgery, all written at once, despite being dated over months. Same ink throughout, same pen pressure patterns. Paper fibers consistent. It was fabricated. Stephanie's face turned red. Patricia called Noah's preschool teacher, Miss Thompson. She testified about Noah, telling her he was being coached to be afraid of Grandma Frances. That he'd said his mommy told him he had to say I yelled, but I didn't really yell. He missed me. Judge Anderson frowned, looking at Stephanie with obvious suspicion. Patricia presented security footage from the apartment complex, showing my car never entered the property on the night I supposedly showed up drunk and disorderly. I was provably somewhere else. Bank ATM footage showed me across town at the exact time. The drunk incident never happened. Perjury. Then Patricia called Agnes via video testimony. The 92-year-old woman appeared on the courtroom screen, telling her story. How Linda had been her caregiver 15 years ago in Colorado. How Linda had gained her trust, isolated her from family, claimed Agnes was incompetent, tried to take control of everything. Linda stole $80,000 over 2 years. She would have put me in a home and taken my house if my nephew hadn't figured it out. It's the same thing she's doing to this poor woman. Patricia introduced Linda's conviction records. Judge Anderson looked at Stephanie. You knew about your mother's conviction? Stephanie had to admit it. Yes, but that was years ago. She's changed. Changed? Patricia asked. Or perfected her method and taught it to her daughter? Patricia had me testify about the overheard conversation at the baptism. About Stephanie and Linda discussing taking my house, getting me out of the way, just like Colorado. I spoke clearly, calmly, telling the truth. Then Patricia revealed the trust. She explained that Garrett stood to inherit $3.5 million unless he took legal action against me. The guardianship petition triggered the dissolution clause. Harold had put it there specifically to protect me from financial exploitation. Your Honor, the motive is clear, Patricia said. They want Mrs. Hayes's house and assets. They've fabricated evidence, committed perjury, coached a child, filed a fraudulent medical opinion. This isn't a concerned family trying to help. This is elder financial abuse. Judge Anderson looked at Garrett. Mr. Hayes, did you know about this trust? No, Your Honor, Garrett said quietly. My mother told me 2 days ago. And yet you're still here? Garrett looked at Stephanie, then at me. Something in his face broke. He stood up. Your Honor, I'd like to withdraw the petition. Stephanie grabbed his arm. What? No, Garrett. Garrett pulled away from her. You lied to me. About everything. Stephanie's mask slipped. The calm, sweet facade cracked. You idiot. $3 million and you're going to throw it away for her? Judge Anderson banged his gavel. Mrs. Hayes, sit down. But Stephanie was unraveling. I didn't spend 5 years with you just to end up with nothing. That house is mine. She owes me. There it was. Her true nature, Exposed in open court for everyone to see, Mrs. Hayes, Judge Anderson warned. She's just a selfish old woman, Stephanie screamed. She should step aside. I earned that house. Security officers moved toward her. Linda tried to calm her daughter, but it was too late. The truth was out, raw and ugly. Judge Anderson denied the guardianship petition entirely. He was also referring the case to the district attorney for criminal prosecution. Charges being considered included perjury, forgery, attempted financial exploitation of an elderly person, and child abuse for coaching Noah. He dissolved the temporary guardianship immediately and vacated the restraining order. I was free. Outside the courthouse, Garrett approached me. He was crying. Mom, I'm so sorry. I didn't know. I didn't see what she was. I know, honey. She had me convinced you were losing it. Every time you said anything against her, she had an explanation. I thought I was helping you. She's very good at manipulation. I've lost the trust. $3 million. Because I was an idiot. Here's where I showed my character. The trust has a dissolution clause, I said. But I'm the trustee, and I haven't dissolved it yet. Garrett looked confused. What? I can choose to maintain it. Harold put that clause in to protect me from being exploited. But you're not exploiting me. You were deceived. Mom, the petition triggered it automatically. Patricia, standing nearby, spoke up. The trust document allows trustee discretion in cases of undue influence. If Frances can show you acted in good faith, were manipulated, she can preserve the trust. Why would you do that? After what I did to you? Because you're my son, and you need to build a new life now. Take care of my grandchildren. Garrett broke down completely. I'm filing for divorce. Today. Good, I said. Get therapy. Learn to see red flags. Get the kids away from her. 6 months passed. So much changed in that time. Stephanie and Linda both pled guilty to lesser charges to avoid trial. They got probation and had to pay restitution, though neither had much money. Stephanie's probation included mandatory psychiatric treatment and no contact with me. Linda moved back to Colorado. Garrett's divorce was finalized. He got full custody of Emma and Noah. The judge had been deeply concerned about Stephanie's behavior in the guardianship hearing and her conviction for fraud and perjury. She got supervised visitation only, twice a month. Garrett moved back into my guest house temporarily while he sorted out his life. He was in therapy, working through how he'd been manipulated, learning to recognize the red flags he'd missed. We had long talks, healing old wounds. He apologized 1,000 times. I forgave him every time, and I had my grandchildren back. Every weekend, they stayed with me. We baked cookies, read stories, played in the backyard. My house was full of life again. Toys scattered across the living room floor. Little fingerprints on the windows. The sound of laughter echoing through rooms that had been silent for too long. It was a warm Saturday afternoon in April. I was sitting in my garden, the one Harold and I had planted together 40 years ago. The tulips he'd loved were in full bloom. Emma, now 18 months old, was toddling around, picking dandelions with chubby hands. Noah was kicking a soccer ball across the grass. Garrett was in the kitchen making lemonade. I could see him through the window, and my heart felt full. My family whole again. Not perfect, still healing, but together. Emma toddled over to me and handed me a dandelion, her face bright with joy. I held my granddaughter close, breathing in the baby shampoo smell of her hair. This child I'd fought so hard to protect. "Grandma, watch me kick!" Noah yelled. "I'm watching, sweetheart," I called back. I thought about that moment, at the baptism, 9 months ago. Stephanie whispering in my ear. "Maybe it's time you step aside, Frances. We don't need you anymore." I could have stepped aside. Given up. Given in. Let them take everything because fighting seemed too hard, too painful. But I didn't. I'd learned something profound through all of this. Evil doesn't always announce itself with horns and a pitchfork. Sometimes it comes dressed as a daughter-in-law at a baptism, wearing a smile while plotting your destruction. Sometimes the people we trust most are the ones who betray us deepest. But I also learned this. You don't protect yourself through revenge. You protect yourself through truth. I didn't destroy Stephanie. I simply revealed what she already was. The truth was always there, hidden under layers of manipulation and lies. All I did was bring it into the light. And when someone you love is being manipulated, you don't give up on them. Even when it hurts. Even when they choose the manipulator over you. You plant seeds of truth and wait for them to grow. Garrett came back to me, not because I forced him or threatened him, but because I gave him room to see reality. I told him the truth and let him make his own choice. The greatest victory isn't crushing your enemy. It's reclaiming your peace, your family, your life. It's standing firm when everything in you wants to surrender. It's choosing truth over bitterness, love over revenge, patience over desperation. Standing in my garden now, watching my grandchildren play in the home Harold and I built together, I knew I'd made the right choice. That quiet call to the bank all those months ago, stopping the automatic payments, wasn't an act of cruelty. It was an act of self-preservation. It was me saying, enough. It was me choosing to protect what was mine, what Harold had worked his whole life to provide for us. I didn't step aside. I stood firm. And love, real love, not manipulation disguised as love, won in the end. Emma brought me another dandelion, this one already gone to seed. "Make a wish, Grandma," she said in her tiny voice. I closed my eyes and blew the seeds into the spring air, watching them scatter across my garden. I didn't need to wish for anything. Everything I'd wished for was already here. Noah ran over, sweaty and happy. "Grandma, can we have lemonade now?" "Absolutely. Let's go see if your dad has it ready." I stood up, holding Emma's hand, walking toward my house with Noah running ahead. Garrett met us at the back door with a tray of glasses filled with fresh lemonade, ice cubes clinking. My home, my son, my grandchildren, my peace. All of it reclaimed, all of it protected, all of it worth every moment of the fight. So I want to ask you something. Have you ever faced a situation where someone you trusted tried to take advantage of you? Where standing up for yourself meant risking a relationship you valued? How did you handle it? Did you stand firm, or did you step aside? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. Your experience might help someone else facing a similar battle. If this story resonated with you, if it touched your heart, or made you think about your own relationships and boundaries, please hit that like button. It helps others find this story who might need to hear it. And if you want to hear more stories about resilience, family, and finding strength in difficult times, please subscribe to this channel. Share this video with someone who might need the reminder that it's okay to stand up for yourself, even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. Thank you for listening to my story. Thank you for being here with me on this journey. I hope you found something in these words that speaks to your own life, your own struggles, your own victories. May you always have the courage to stand firm in your truth. May you protect what matters most. And may you always, always choose love over fear. Take care of yourselves and each other.